All right. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of That's an Awful Take, episode 22. Thank y'all for tuning in. Welcome back, everybody. A little early this week, going out of town this weekend, so had to do the episode a little bit early, but that never hurt nobody. It's been a kind of eventful week, honestly, in a lot of the sports realms, like football, golf, basketball, baseball. It's been a lot for sure. So, it's nice to get on here a little bit earlier, talk about some more stuff. So, I'm Price Manser, your host with the most, here to make the most out of your day. Hope everyone's having a wonderful Wednesday. I know I am. Not can't complain at all, really. Hope everyone's had a good week. But let's go ahead and get into it. So I'm sure you saw the thumbnail. So shout out my roommate Liam for making the thumbnail for this week's episode. Really cool. Maybe that can be a weekly thing. Who knows? We'll see. But really cool. Love that for the pod. It makes us a little bit more official. So we like that. The Masters was great, especially Sunday, watching Rory win, get the Grand Slam. It was very interesting, seeing Sunday starting the day off with Bryson DeChambeau and Rory McIlroy going head to head, and then DeChambeau blowing up, and then Rory, barely carrying the lead all the way to the finish, with a playoff between him and Justin Rose, which, it wasn't really that fair. But, it was a great Masters to watch for sure. I know a lot of people are happy that Rory finally won a Masters, completes the Grand Slam, which is great for the game of golf and all that good stuff. So we love that there. And, of course, we had the Kyron Lacey drama over the weekend. First of all, rest in peace to Kyron Lacey. Check on your people. He was a great NFL prospect, in my opinion. Highly touted wide receiver out of high school. But, I really enjoyed watching him at LSU. He's a great receiver throughout the college football season. Just a few, mishaps, and I'm not going to speak much on it, just out of respect for his family and whatnot. But, it really is a crappy situation, especially with, what he did. If you guys don't know, he was swerving in and out of traffic, caused someone else to crash and lose their lives, and, was dealing with the repercussions of that, obviously, and had a lot going on mentally from what it sounds like, and ended up in a police chase and crashing and then killing himself. So, that's about as far into it as I'll get, but rest in peace, Kyron Lacey. And, without further ado, let's get into the juice of the show, right? So the first thing we're going to talk about is the Nico the Nico Yamalava situation. So, if you guys haven't heard, or if you live under a rock, Nico Yamalava is no longer at the University of Tennessee. And the story kind of goes, it's like, Nico wanted more money. He was getting, I think, $2 million a year. And especially, right when this winter portal stuff started kicking off, right around the first week of the playoffs, you saw a lot of quarterbacks entering the portal and, getting, $2.5 million. Guys like John Mateer, I think, are valued at $2.8 million. So, there's a lot of guys getting more money than Nico was. And, they tried to go into somewhat negotiations in December, from what I heard. And, Tennessee wasn't really budging on giving him more money. And, guys like Carson Beck, start to hit the portal after the playoffs. And, Miami pays him $4 million allegedly. And, Nico's camp, his agent and his dad, I believe, think it's not fair. But it's kind of up to how you feel about Nico. I mean, I don't think he was worth that much. I think the $2 million was honestly more than enough for what you're getting and what we saw this season. But, based off the stats, he's not worth it at all. But, it depends how you think of him potential-wise, if you think he's going to be that good or not, which I don't think he was going to be that good. My light's not on, but sorry, guys. But I didn't think he was going to be that good. I still don't think that, especially now. I think in terms of his development, this definitely takes a left turn for him. But, it's not worth it. And then it comes out, he's threatened to sit the CFP game against Ohio State. And if you watch the Ohio State-Tennessee game, Tennessee looked awful. Tennessee couldn't get anything going. I think the final score was 42-17 or something like that. But Tennessee just did not look good. And I think it's kind of evident, like, in the locker room, especially if a guy's threatening your quarterback, the leader of your team is threatening to sit out of the first round college football playoff game, you're not going to play good. I think that's pretty self-explanatory, pretty easy to say. But, Tennessee still isn't budging. And, then it gets to the point where someone, either his dad or his agent, starts telling Nico, because I don't think Nico did this completely on his own, but he advises Nico to skip meetings and practices, which was like kind of the ultimate thing. The report came out earlier last week that Nico was skipping practices and meetings, and nobody really knew what was going on. It was believed to be rumored around NIL. And then, another report comes out, I think it may have been the same day, where Nico's agent and his dad were shopping him around college football, making calls to USC, Colorado, UCLA, Oregon. And then, the Oregon call comes through. Dan Lanning finds out, and then Dan Lanning goes behind their back, calls Josh Heupel, head coach at Tennessee, if you don't know. And, Heupel finds out through Dan Lanning, that Nico's agent is pretty much shopping him around college football. And, that's where I think it went too far, obviously. And, like, before the spring portal could even open, which it opened this Monday, I believe, Heupel kicked him off the team. He was dismissed from the University of Tennessee football team, at least. And that's kind of like where we're at now, right? And like I said earlier, do I think this is completely Nico's doing? Not at all. But like, it is really immature. Ultimately, as a person, you have like the ultimate decision to pull the trigger kind of deal. You could get all this advice you want, and whether or not you're gonna take it, it really just depends on what you're gonna do. And ultimately, like, while I don't think it is completely Nico's fault, he's still the guy who pulled the trigger. He's still the guy. He still skipped practice and meetings. He still threatened to sit out a CFP game. Like, it wasn't completely on him, but was he the one that was doing it? Yeah. So it is really immature, right? And it's something new that we really haven't seen in college football yet, is threatening to sit out or skipping meetings and practices to get a better deal. And I think Nico's camp especially kind of handled this situation horribly and terribly, especially for Nico's development. Nico is still kind of a raw prospect. I mean, you got to keep in mind, this guy's only started one full season of college football, and even though it's only one full season, it was at the SEC level, right? So, you're playing the best of the best, and, you're only a sophomore. I think he's technically a redshirt freshman, but, it's like you need to be developed. I think that's clear. The only good games you have are against crappy teams that you're playing, against the Kent States, the UTEPs. Like, I think 12 of your 19 touchdowns come from teams that are from the Group of Five or FCS. And, in every big game you've played, you've looked bad. So, obviously he was the number one quarterback in the nation, I think, or at least top 3, top 2. And, the potential is definitely there. But, allegedly. But, like, it's like, what's going on? Like, this does not help his development at all. You have to go to a new team now in the spring where you have to learn a whole new offense, whole new coaching staff, whole new players, new bonds you have to build. Like, it's really like, it doesn't make sense, right? And it's really immature, in my opinion. And, I was never the biggest Nico fan, even when he was coming out of high school, but it's just like really just unbelievable. And shout out to Tennessee, honestly, that for handling that the situation so well. And, I think Tennessee, obviously, you could have taken the route to pay Nico the $4 million that he was asking for, and if he holds out long enough and then you eventually pay him the $4 million, I think that's very destructive for college football, and obviously it's not going to help. But I like how Tennessee took a stand and were like, no. But, shout out Tennessee for that. But, that kind of leaves us where we're at, where, Nico's in the portal, and you know, there's some big issues obviously with Nico in the portal, and I think that's being realized now. So you have two teams, or two reasons, sorry, or two, I think two big issues for Nico, and I think one of them is really bigger than the other. So obviously, the money is a big issue for Nico. No team's going to pay him $4 million. Let me make that clear. No team is going to pay him that much money. You know, Carson Beck is the best returning quarterback in college football. He's proven to be an All-American level player, and there's a reason why he's getting that $4 million, regardless of what he put up last season, which even with the stats, he looked great. I think that, you know, Carson Beck is still the best quarterback in college football right now, but, you know, I don't think he's completely to blame for what he put up statistically last season. So I think there's a good reason why he gets $4 million. But, you know, price is one thing, but, you know, the baggage I think is really the biggest thing, you know. Excuse me. No coach wants a guy who is willing to sit out of important games, college football playoff games. No coach or team or school is going to want that. You know, you're missing practices, you're missing meetings. You've already proven to teams that you're going to pull the trigger when you do that. Like, you're going to make the decision to do it. And, you know, I think that's a bigger deal than the money for most teams. I mean, the price tag is one thing, but the baggage about it is another. Like, his dad and his agent, you know, awful baggage to have. And it's not something just with Nico, you know. Nico's younger brother was originally committed to UCLA and then flips on National Signing Day to Arkansas, and UCLA's staff was like, we're completely blindsided by this. So obviously, whoever's advising the Iamaleava family is awful from a college football standpoint. Like, there's no, like, righteousness in what this guy's doing, I guess is what you could say. And it is a cutthroat industry at times, but it's very weird to see. Like, this is the first time we've kind of seen that in this era of college football, right? So, and then you look at the teams who are originally in on Nico once he hit the portal. You know, teams like UCLA, USC, Oregon, Tulane, UNC, and Colorado. And like almost immediately, Oregon was out because obviously Dan Lanning was the one who called Heupel. So Oregon's originally out, and then he was crystal balled to UNC. That was a BS report, but UNC's out. Colorado is out. Tulane drops out yesterday. And then, you know, we've gotten mixed reports from UCLA today. Like, as of like 30 minutes ago, it was reported that, Nico commits to UCLA. According to The Athletic, he has. According to Colin Cowherd, he has. But, you know, I've yet to see anything really official. So, obviously, USC is a team with a big pocketbook who I think, you know, could make that deal work. But, you know, honestly, I really hope he doesn't go Power 5. You know what I'm saying? Let me take some water roll. But, like, Nico, honestly, like, I don't think he should go Power 5. And I'm surprised if UCLA gives him the money. If, you know, Nico went down to their terms, or if UCLA went up to Nico's terms. It's going to be very interesting to see if it's true that the whole deal comes out. But I don't think he should be a Power 5 football player, especially after this fiasco. It's very childish, and I don't think a lot of good Power 5 coaches or Power 4 coaches want this in their locker room. And that's why UCLA is willing to take a, you know, look at this, because UCLA's coach is not that great. I'll be honest. Their staff is not great, right? But, you know, a lot of mixed reports for UCLA. Excuse me on that burp, by the way. But, you know, who knows? You know, Colin Cowherd says he's committed. The Athletic reported he's committed. I've seen posts about it, but, you know, nothing official yet. Maybe I'm wrong, but who knows? You know, and that kind of leads us to where we're at today, which is going to be a transfer portal update. You know, transfer portal updates are back for a little bit. You know, pride and joy of this podcast, probably, you know, the most substance of this podcast in previous episodes has been the transfer portal updates, and, you know, the winter portal. That whole ordeal went on for multiple weeks, and now we have the spring portal. We can get into it a little bit here today. So we're going to take a quick look at chat here. Price, good to see you back. What up, Neil? Feeling under the weather here in Athens. Thoughts on ordering Uber Eats for dinner as opposed to leaving the house? Yeah, Neil. So, we love an Uber Eats play, especially when you're sick. I mean, it just really depends what you want. You know what I'm saying? Like a good Panera Bread Uber Eats run when you're sick could be the difference maker. Maybe a little blue Powerade for the drink. Maybe a little soup in a bread bowl. Chicken noodle or broccoli cheddar. A little half sandwich, maybe. Couldn't be a more hateful play. Honestly, I love that play. I couldn't hate on that. And, hope you feel better, man. Maybe you get a little Wingstop. Is there a Wingstop in Athens? I don't know. I have a distinct memory of ordering Wingstop from Uber Eats and getting it for free. So, yeah. Good to see everyone chat.
What did I join to?
Oh my gosh, what the heck? Sorry, guys. Discord was open. That's my bad. Oops. Yeah. Anyways, yeah, Liam said if he would have went to UNC, I would have imploded. I agree. Yeah, Panera Bread Uber Eats going to run you 28. Yeah, that's true. But, you're sick. I don't know. Could be the play. You would have went to UNC, I would have imploded. Yeah, I don't blame you. I think Bill Belichick's smarter than that, though. I saw people saying, well, Bill Belichick can fix him. No, Bill Belichick doesn't want to fix him. Bill Belichick wants his guy. Anyways, portal update. Get this off my face. Just kidding. But we can kind of look at the I guess it is official. It is official. According to 24/7, it is official. It is. Sorry about that. According to 24/7, it is official. Live on the pod, Nico has committed. But no, I heard about this at like 4:30. Didn't know the validity of it, but yeah, I guess it is valid. So, we'll just go for the most recent stuff, I guess. Let's get into it. So, actually, I'll just do the top, right? So Nico. Obviously, he commits to UCLA. Apparently, not verified yet, but we'll see how it goes. But for the most part, I mean, it's Nico. We've heard the drama. We'll see if he stays at UCLA or if falls through. Wouldn't be surprised if it fell through, honestly. But yeah, interesting stuff there. So let's go to the top available. So the top available, 24/7 does a horrible job ranking prospects or transfer portal players, in my opinion. And that's kind of how we see it with like Elo Medozi, who, isn't a bad edge by any means for Army, but really did not get a lot of playing time. He does have, the measurables to be a good player. And when he did get in, he had like 6.5 sacks, but like he's shown flashes, but this is based off potential on a guy who was in the 2021 class. So I don't really like him as a number one ranked player in the portal right now. And there are, obviously this portal is not going to be nearly as good as the winter one because it's just teams who've lost their rotational spots in spring games and all that good stuff. So Micah Hudson, I wouldn't touch this guy with like a 10-foot pole, especially if I'm a power team. Like, obviously he was at Texas Tech for a little bit, or for last season. Didn't get on the field much as a 5-star. Commits to Texas A&M. And then something happened with him and the team, not showing up to stuff, I think was the case. And now he's back in the portal. Would not touch this guy with like a 10-foot pole. Julian Neal, pretty good corner from Fresno State last year. And he committed to Stanford in the winter and comes back and leaves the portal again. And I believe what it is like, these guys, especially for these big sites like 24/7 or On3, is that these guys, they go to these bigger schools and they're going to give them stars, not based on talent, but based on the schools they're talking to, which is BS. It's really dumb. I don't think it should work like that. Like guys like Micah Hudson should not be a 4-star player in the portal. He should have been, a 3-star at this point in his career, right? Julian Neal, while he did put up great statistics at Fresno State, obviously something had to go wrong if he's not working out at Stanford. And maybe it's the coach leaving, the coach getting fired, but, we'll see. Mark Hamper, interesting case here, was a really good deep threat wide receiver for Idaho last year and then commits to Wisconsin in the winter and has now hit the portal in the spring. So I don't know if, is he getting beat out by other guys, and this is a guy who played at the FCS level. So it's going to be interesting to see if he, maybe goes to the group of five or whatnot. It's interesting to see these FCS players go to the Power Four, and then once the winter portal or once the spring portal opens, they're now in the portal again. Joe Cotton, pretty good tackle for out of South Dakota. The measurables are great, 6'7", 315. So what you really want to see out of a tackle, I think he should be pretty good. I haven't seen much on him, but from what I've read, he looks to be pretty good. Trevor Pena, pretty good wide receiver for Syracuse last year. Was like the kind of like Kyle McCord's go-to guy last year. 9 touchdowns, I believe, it's for Syracuse. So I mean, obviously this guy's a good player, and we'll see how it works out for him in the portal. Obviously, I think there are some teams who need wide receiver. So I think teams like Kentucky definitely needs wide receiver. That's just kind of the first thing that came to mind. But USC is also another option. And maybe another Big Ten school, or I guess Syracuse is ACC, but going to a Big Ten school or another ACC school for Pena might not be the worst idea for him. Bo Atkinson, I don't believe the hype in this guy. I don't know why he's a top 10 player in the portal. If you look at the tape and watch, the stats, they don't look bad. He's got like 7.5 sacks on the season, which is pretty good numbers, right? And then you look at it, you look at the individual games, and he only got sacks against teams with like horrible O lines. So he had 3.5 sacks against FSU. Like, how much does that mean to me? If I'm a power school, how much does that mean? 3.5 sacks against FSU. I think I could probably get 3.5 sacks against FSU if I really tried. But that's not true at all, by the way. But, it's like, don't believe the hype. You got 2 sacks against Virginia, 3.5 against a very sorry FSU. I don't believe the hype whatsoever. Against every other team with a good O-line, he struggled immensely. So, give me, I'm not believing the hype on Bo Atkinson. Jaden Rashada, I'm honestly kind of surprised. This is a guy who entered the portal in the winter, in January 5th, and still hasn't gotten a job. And I'm kind of surprised because it's not like Jaden Rashada was a bad quarterback by any means. Obviously, started as a freshman at Arizona State and was not great, but, goes to Georgia, and he doesn't go to Georgia to play. He goes to Georgia to learn to develop. And, even when he committed last season to Georgia, I was like, this is a guy who's going to hit the portal next year. And, he hit the portal. And obviously, I think he's talked to a couple teams. He's had a couple visits with, like, Western Kentucky or something. But, I'm kind of surprised he hasn't found a new job. And even if it's a group of 5 team, which I'm pretty certain is going to be a group of 5 team, I think there are teams in the group of 5 especially that, kind of need a quarterback. So maybe Rashada is really thinking power 4 team, but honestly, if he goes to the group of 5, I think that's a great pickup for a group of 5 team. I mean, you even have guys like Connor Wiegman who went to the group of 5, and I think it's probably one of the best moves of the offseason, of the college football offseason. So that's what I like about Jaden Rashada. I think he should have a job in the group of 5, and maybe as the standard's too high, I don't know, but he should have a job in my opinion. Jonte Cook, don't touch this guy. It's not worth it at all. Like, he's a problem to his team. I mean, you see the stars, they're dropping, right? So he was a 5-star out of high school because he committed to Texas, and then 4-star in the portal, and then he commits to Washington, and then gets kicked off the team at Washington, and then he's now a 3-star and is probably going to play Division II football or something. I don't know. But Tamir Robinson from Penn State, both of these guys, JB Nelson and Tamir Robinson, I think both hit the portal today, or at least Tamir Robinson did. Don't really know much about the defenders on this side of the ball. But anyways, we go down here. Gio Lopez out of South Alabama. Crystal balled 100% to UNC. If this happens, like, Gio Lopez is the truth. Like, his film is so good. Like, he is a great quarterback. And at South Alabama last year, it really was like, in terms of passing the ball, it was a one-man show. The receivers were awful. And, South Alabama is a team where they had really good receivers back, like, almost like 3 years ago, or 2 years ago, with, like, guys like Colin Lacey, who's now at Louisville. Like they had great wide receivers who are playing at the power schools right now. But Gio Lopez is the truth. The film is so good. The stats last year were not great, but like it wasn't his fault. And his backfield mate Fluff Bothwell, obviously at Mississippi State now, who's going to be a great running back, by the way. Like he's really good. And if you doubt this move, there's something wrong with you because there's a reason why Bill Belichick wants this guy, and I feel like he would actually start right away if he went and developed under Bill Belichick, and I think he could be like in 2 years because I think he was a true freshman last year, or at least a redshirt freshman last year. And by the time he get to the draft, I think he'd be a first round pick if he played under Bill Belichick long enough. So maybe that's a crazy take. I don't think so whatsoever. So yeah. Yeah, a lot of, it's mainly backups, right? That's the thing you're seeing right here. It's mainly backups. So, Branson Robinson, for instance, backup running back at Georgia, never really was that healthy. So, hits the portal, he's below guys. And I do believe Georgia is a team where they're going for guys in the portal, especially at the running back position, right? Like there are guys like that they need at running back, in my opinion. Maybe not that they need, but guys like they want depth at the running back position is what I'm trying to say. Anyways, the available quarterbacks obviously is Rashada, Gio Lopez. Other than that, Mike Wright maybe, Jake Garcia. Like there's not a lot of great quarterbacks available in the portal right now, and that's just how the spring portal goes. At running back, Anthony Carey, who is the backup running back to Jamal Haynes. It's a lot of, not really great guys, right? That's just kind of the point I'm trying to prove here. We obviously talked about these 4 wide receivers, but, not a lot of great options, except down here, where's it at? Ymir Knight. He had no stars earlier, earlier today, and now I have S3 because he must be talking to some high-level teams. So that's just how these sites work. Anyways, Micah Pittman still does not have a job. Good to know. But if we look at the committed latest, if I can get that, I think I can, kind of. Anyways, we'll scroll through it. Obviously, you got Nico, not confirmed yet, but there's a couple guys I want to talk about. Makai Gaber, I don't know how to say his last name, but doesn't have a lot of film. Not really on the field much. He's kind of been a rotational piece at Nebraska. Committed to Mizzou in the fall and is now at UNC. So we'll see how that goes. Cal lost all their running backs, which is pretty interesting, I guess. But yeah, that's how it goes, I guess. They lost all but one. All that's left is like a true freshman. But anyways, big name here, Jaden Ott. So if you don't know who Jaden Ott is, you need to. Because obviously last year college football was full of great running backs. And, we saw guys like Dylan Sampson, Taj Brooks, Amarion Hampton, Ashton Jeanty, obviously, Cam Scadaboo. Excuse me. All these great running backs. But, Jaden Ott was a guy who, for the last 2 years, or the last 2 seasons before this one, was elite, outstanding, and it was one of those guys in the Amarion Hampton, Caleb Johnson, Ashton GT conversation. But, was banged up this season, didn't play well when he did, and, was hurt. And so, he stayed at Cal for another year, but then for some reason all of Cal's running backs have left. So then he takes this and commits to Oklahoma, which is a great pickup for the Sooners. Obviously, if we look at the Sooners starting rotation right now as it is, it's honestly not looking bad. I'm a big Deion Burks fan. You got John Mateer at quarterback, which is going to be elite. Probably a top 5 returning quarterback in the nation right now. You bring in Jaden Ott at running backs, and you have Javonte Barnes. Honestly, this room is definitely improved from last season, in my opinion. I think even between John Mateer, Jaden Ott, and Deion Burks, you have a lot there, in my opinion. So I really like what Oklahoma is doing in the portal. I think they're doing a great job, especially by going out and getting a guy like Jaden Ott. So we already talked about Mark Hamper. Jameer Johnson. So Jameer Johnson hit the portal in the winter portal, and was honestly he was one of the best cornerbacks last season. Started every game for Indiana and looked elite, and is now transferred to UCLA. So that's a great pickup for UCLA. Obviously on defense they did not have much last season. Same with their whole team in general. But this is a move that I really like for UCLA. Jameer Johnson is a very good corner, so I think good for UCLA. I don't know if it's good for Jameer Johnson, but good for UCLA. Next is Trinidad Chambliss. So if you don't know who Trinidad Chambliss is, Division II player at Ferris State, who won the Division II national championship last season over Valdosta. But it's like I think he legitimately could give Austin Simmons a run for his money. Like legitimately, like talent-wise, Chambliss is just as good as any power quarterback. The guy can throw the ball, he can run the ball, and he scores touchdowns. Right? He had 2,500 passing yards, which isn't much, but 2,500 passing yards, 26 touchdowns through the air, 1,000 rushing yards on the ground, and then 25 more touchdowns on the ground as well. So this is a guy who combined for 51 touchdowns in Division II last year, won the national championship, MVP of the national championship game. Like Trinidad Chambliss can compete with just about anyone on the power level, I believe, on the power school level. Like, to me, this guy's ceiling is like somewhere near Lamar Jackson. Like, I think this guy has legitimate talent. Like, he is going to be great. He can run. He can throw. Like, really and truly, especially in a Lane Kiffin system where we see quarterbacks running a good bit and we see that RPO game where, you have the option to run pass. Like, I think Trinidad Chambliss can really flourish if he gets the opportunity to play. And, obviously Austin Simmons is the guy right now. And, I think a lot of Ole Miss fans and maybe even the Ole Miss coaching staff believes that, but they didn't bring in Trinidad Chambliss for no reason. Obviously, Ole Miss is a team that is used to bringing in depth pieces, like, for instance, Walker Howard or Spencer Sanders, to think of two. But, I do think Trinidad Chambliss could give Austin Simmons a legitimate run for his money if, Ole Miss is not careful. So maybe Trinidad Chambliss is a name to watch out for. That's all I'm saying. Next is Christian Fitzpatrick here. Christian Fitzpatrick commits to Oklahoma State. So if you don't know who Christian Fitzpatrick is, he's part of that really good Marshall team led by Charles Huff. This guy, Braylon Braxton was a quarterback, and then you had guys like Chuck Montgomery, voice crack, Christian Fitzpatrick, he had 800 yards receiving. Like, Christian Fitzpatrick is a really good receiver. Like the last name, I mean, you look at the height and weight, he's 6'4", 217. So he's not like some blazing speedster, but, in terms of route running, finesse, and like just getting open, Christian Fitzpatrick is really good at that. And he's going to catch the football. He has great hands. So I really like this move by Oklahoma State. Obviously Oklahoma State does not have a lot right now, especially after last season, but I really like the move for Oklahoma State. Obviously we talked about Jaden Ott already, but, another name is Emmett Mosley. Emmett Mosley the fifth. So out of high school, this guy was just a 3-star recruit, committed to Stanford. But, I watched his high school tape, kind of random, right? But I watched the high school tape, and he looked legit. Like, this guy could start anywhere, right? So he goes to Stanford, and he does start as a freshman and records 3 touchdowns against Louisville when they beat Louisville. So, Emmett Mosley is really good. And obviously you see he's going to Texas here. So, like, it's not just some random depth piece for Texas, in my opinion. This guy has the makings to be a superstar, play on Sundays kind of deal. So, much like we saw with Matthew Golden from Houston, goes to Texas, and is now, being mocked in the first round in some cases, I think you could see a very similar trajectory for Emmett Mosley the fifth. Obviously, he's going to have to play in college 2 more years, and honestly, that might do him better to develop. He's going to be playing with Arch Manning. He's going to be playing for 2 years with Arch Manning, and if Arch Manning is a real deal, like everyone says he is, then Emmett Mosley should flourish and should probably be a first-round pick, which I don't think is ridiculous to say that at all. The last name for the portal stuff I'm going to talk about, go down here, Sincere Brown. So Sincere Brown obviously went to Campbell, if you don't know what that logo is. But Sincere Brown originally commits to USF out of high school, then goes down. Didn't play a lot in his first year of college. Goes down to the FCS level for Campbell, and did really good on a really bad Campbell team. I'm talking 1,000-yard receivers or 1,000-yard receiver, like 8 or 9 touchdowns. So he honestly played really well at Campbell. Obviously, you see the build: 6'5" and 190, a little skinny, a little light. Sorry, for 6'5", but this is a guy who can move, and I think will make a difference for Colorado because you think about the Colorado receiving room. I mean, it really got cleaned out. You lose Hunter, obviously. Jimmy Horn's gone. What's his name from FAU's gone. Like and I don't know about. I think Will Shepherd's gone. I don't know, but like we could just look it up right now, to be honest. But this is a team where a lot of guys are going to be gone. So they don't even have Sincere on here. But you see Jimmy Horn, Will Shepherd, and LeJontay Wester are all gone, right? So, you're basically you're with Joseph Williams, who was from Tulsa, who's really great. Draylon Miller, who I'm a believer in as well. And then you bring in Sincere Brown, which honestly is a not half bad receiving room. Definitely not as good as last year's receiving room by any means. Not as good as 2024 Colorado's receiving room, but it's definitely a step in the right direction, especially with Caden Salter at quarterback. This is a team that maybe makes a bowl game, unfortunately for Colorado, but it's not going to be. You're not going to get any CFP hopes with that team. No offense, but if you guys have any questions about the transfer portal, please let me know. We're about to switch gears to the NBA. That stuff. Regular season just ended. So we're going to switch over to the NBA a little bit. Switch the cam back. Big stretch, but let's go ahead and get into these NBA awards, right? So obviously the NBA season just ended. Play-in games started. I should have kind of went over the playoff matchups a little bit, but it's fine. We'll save it for a later date. But so because it's only the plan right now, right? I could just do an emergency episode, whatever. Anyways, the NBA awards. Just obviously there's a couple: Rookie of the Year, Defensive Player of the Year, Sixth Man of the Year, Most Improved Player, Coach of the Year, MVP. You could do Clutch Player of the Year, but it's a BS award. That's stupid. Anyways, NBA awards: Rookie of the Year. So the rookies in this year's class were honestly really mid. It's like, you're taking a pick out of the mid basket. It's, Stephon Castle, Alex Sarr, Juice Wells for Memphis, and like Zachary Ricochet. And I think the top three were Castle, Wells, and Ricochet. And so, not really much to pick from. And statistically, by far the best rookie was definitely Stephon Castle, who averaged 15, 4, and 4 throughout the season. Played with Wemby, but obviously Wemby was hurt the second half of the season. And, it's just, I like Stephon Castle to win it because really and truly there was no one better statistically than Castle. But I think, on a potential level, I think Stephon Castle's potential is extremely capped between, because you have Chris Paul. The guard room is just so loaded for the Spurs. Between Devin Vassell, Chris Paul, De'Aaron Fox, Stephon Castle. Like, those are 4 guards that are, kind of all play a similar role minus Chris Paul. So, and obviously Chris Paul is a guy who's going to be out the door. And I think Vassell is a guy they could move on from if they see something in Castle. But it's just kind of clogged. And I think for a rookie developing, you don't want to see that cloggedness. And that's why, like, potential-wise, I still think Ricochet, potential-wise, is the best player from his draft class. Because, I mean, his career high in points in this season was 38. He dropped 30-point games on multiple occasions. Like, I think I could think of 4 off the top of my head where Ricochet dropped a 30-point game. And obviously the averages weren't crazy. I think he averaged, like, 12 and, like, 3 and 3. Like, he did not put up any crazy statistics. And I think the Hawks kind of used him in a way where he was kind of limited to just being a shooter. And his 38-point career night against the Brooklyn Nets, he dribbled once, I believe. So kind of playing that Klay Thompson role of where he's going to be a spot up shooter. He's not going to be a guy who goes up like a Michael Porter Jr. kind of role where he's not going to be a guy who gets a lot of rebounds, except Michael Porter Jr. did get a lot of rebounds last season, but a guy who's going to spot up and shoot a lot. That's kind of what Zachary Ricochet gives to me. But statistically, and I think who's going to win, it's going to be Stephon Castle, who averages 15, 4, and 4, pretty good numbers. So I think it's going to be Stephon Castle. Next is Defensive Player of the Year, which I have Dyson Daniels. Little personal bias, but I hate the race for this award, right? By far the best defender in basketball has been Dyson Daniels. And before Wemby got hurt, it was Wembanyama. I won't argue with that. But Dyson Daniels, since Wemby has been hurt, has been the best defender in the league. And obviously, there's a little personal bias because I'm a Hawks fan. But Dyson Daniels, he leads the league in steals. He leads the leagues in steal plus blocks. Like, it's crazy. He's putting up all defensive team numbers from the shooting guard position, and it's great. Like, even when Marcus Smart won the award in 2021, I believe, like Marcus Smart's numbers weren't this good, and it's just insane to me that he isn't being considered because, I do believe it's because he's a perimeter guard kind of guy. He's playing guys on the perimeter, but the fact he isn't even considered over Draymond or Mosley is insane. Because Draymond Green, if we look at the stats here, I have it pulled up, but you look at the stats this season. I don't know if you could see it, but you can't. Well, there we go. But you look at steals per game, 1.5. So 1.5 steals per game, 1.5 steals for Draymond, and then like 1 block a game. Which, like, it's not bad. And Draymond Green is a good defender. But I think he's obviously past his prime. But we look back and we look at Dyson Daniels' stats maybe from when Dyson Daniels was, from this season for Dyson, he averaged 3 steals a game and almost a whole block. So you're saying statistically Draymond is better than Dyson Daniels? I don't believe it one bit. Because, here's the thing for me. It's insane. Like, it's just insane that he isn't even being considered. And it's just because he's a shooting guard. And it needs to make it make sense. That's what I say. Make it make sense. I don't know why Dyson Daniels is not being considered over Draymond Green or even Evan Mobley. Like, it's actually stupid to me. It makes zero sense, and I'm tired of hearing about it. To be quite honest, I'm really tired of hearing about it. So, I have my guy Dyson Daniels, but who knows? Kind of rough. But Sixth Man of the Year. Sixth Man of the Year is another hard pick. You got Peyton Pritchard for the Boston Celtics, who's been great this season, right? 60-win team, averaging like 14 and like 3-3 on 47% shooting from 3. So, absolutely elite shooter. But I do think there's a guy better than Peyton Pritchard, and that's Malik Beasley on the Pistons. He averaged nearly 15 a game, or I think it was like 16 a game. Averaged 16 a game off the bench. Second in the league in three-pointers made, and he came off the bench doing that. And he only got beat because Anthony Edwards played in the last game of the season. So, like, in my opinion, like, Malik Beasley has just been better in terms of scoring. Obviously, he doesn't average as many assists or rebounds as Peyton Pritchard, but Malik Beasley has been elite off the bench. And he's got a higher net rating swing than Pritchard. If you don't know what net rating swing is, it's plus or minus compared to 100, or like per 100 possessions you're on the field, or on the court, sorry. So Malik Beasley had a higher net rating swing than Pritchard, meaning he was more impactful for his team. And I think for an award like Sixth Man of the Year, you're looking for impact more than you're looking for statistics, in my opinion. So I think Sixth Man of the Year will go to Malik Beasley. Most improved player, a lot of people saying this, but Dyson Daniels. once again. So I really think Dyson Daniels does have a chance to take 2 awards. If they give him DPOY, I doubt they will, but they will probably give him MIP for like basically not winning DPOY, if that makes sense. So obviously the statistical jump for Dyson Daniels is like off the charts. Yeah, he played nearly 11 more minutes, but statistically, he put up so much better numbers. Like Dyson Daniels this season, scoring compared to last season. Last season, he averaged 5 points a game, and was only getting up 5 shots a game, but still, only averaged nearly 6 points a game. Wasn't doing much this season for the Hawks. Averaged 14 points a game, and then 6 rebounds and 5 assists, pretty much. So, and all that to go with 3 steals. So, really became an effective piece for the Hawks, and I do believe he should win Most Improved Player. He had a great statistical jump, and a lot of people saying like Cade Cunningham, but Cade Cunningham, you got to remember, Cade Cunningham was a number 1 overall pick, or number 2 overall pick maybe. So he shouldn't be considered for Most Improved Player when he was supposed to have these numbers coming out of college. So that's my piece on Cade Cunningham. But I think another guy to watch out for Most Improved Player, if it's not Dyson Daniels, it could be Ivica Zubac for the Los Angeles Clippers. Obviously had a great statistical jump this season. If you guys don't know, really quietly became a top 10 center in the league, and nobody really noticed. You know, he's one of the last like kind of like pure post up kind of centers. You know, not a guy who shoots a 3-ball. You know, we don't see that very often anymore. You know, you think of the centers, you think of guys like Jokic. You think of guys like even Bam Adebayo shoots the ball a lot now from the 3-point line. Domantas Sabonis, if you consider him a center, I don't really. But, you know, there's not a lot of good, pure post-up centers left, and it's good to see Ivica Zubac become that kind of good post-up center. So I really like that for MIP if Dyson Daniels doesn't win for some reason, which he should. No bias, but anyways. Coach of the Year, Kenny Atkinson of the Cleveland Cavaliers. Obviously, kind of smashed expectations. He had a great team, built a great lineup. I mean, just, you know, starting, and even at the deadline, right? Your starting lineup is Darius Garland, who's turned out to be a great player, Donovan Mitchell, who's always been a perennial All-NBA kind of guy, and then you trade for DeAndre Hunter, who is a great 3-and-D guy, you know, once again, former Atlanta guy, but, you know, it's whatever. Jared Allen, and then Evan Mobley, who Evan Mobley is going to be on an all-defensive team. So, you know, and you have a pretty good center, definitely like a top 20 center in the league, in Jared Allen. So, you know, it makes a lot of sense. And then even off the bench, you have a great lineup, right? You have Ty Jerome coming off the bench. You have, you know, Tristan Thompson coming off the bench, I think, maybe. I don't know. You know, I used to be more inclined on their bench before they traded Karis LeVert and Georges Niang. But anyways, still a great team. And even through trading good bench pieces, they still retained good talent and still were a really good basketball team. So it's going to be Kenny Atkinson for Coach of the Year, I believe. And then MVP. You know, MVP is a 2-horse race right now between Nikola Jokic, and, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. So, you know, we look at the stats. Like, people say Shai Gilgeous-Alexander is a free throw merchant, but he's really not. Compared to, like, other top stars in the league, he really doesn't get more calls than anyone else. Like, it's actually pretty close to league average, above league average. But, you know, he's putting up great numbers, right? You look at it, you know, he's got he led his team to the most wins in the NBA this season, 68, almost 70 mark. Only lost 14 games, which is kind of insane for an NBA season, right? And he averaged 33 points a game. You look at the rebounds, he averaged 5, and then 6.4 assists, so nearly 6.5 assists per game. And all that to go with 1.7 steals and a block as well. So really and truly put up great numbers for the Thunder this season. It was kind of like the heart of that team, in my opinion. And really, you know, in a perfect world where a certain person doesn't exist, I think this would be an automatic, like, unanimous kind of MVP scenario. But unfortunately for Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, there's like a devil in the league, and that's Nikola Jokic. And I really honestly hate for like what's happening right now for Nikola Jokic, because, You look at it the past like 6 years. Nikola Jokic has been a top 3 MVP candidate for the past 6 years. Since Giannis is MVP in 2021, from the COVID year, like Jokic was a guy who he was getting these votes. He was getting these nods ever since he bursted onto the scene, right? And obviously 2 years ago, Joel Embiid won MVP. Jokic was looking for the three-peat, and you look at it, like Jokic did not have stellar stats compared. Obviously there's a dip in points per game. You could see it here, a dip in points per game, rebounds, and assists. So not as great, his greatest season by any means. So, Jokic wins that, or Joel Embiid wins that MVP. But then Jokic comes back the next season, wins the MVP. So 3 MVPs in the past 4 seasons for Nikola Jokic. And so now we have Nikola Jokic, who puts up his best statistical season yet. 30 points, 13 rebounds, and 10 assists, which is insane numbers. I mean, nothing compares to this, in my opinion. You can look at Russell Westbrook's MVP season when he averaged a triple-double, but it wasn't a triple-double like this. It wasn't, third in points per game, third in rebounds per game, and second in assists per game as a center. That is outlandish information. That is outlandish statistics. And, his team is in the playoffs. You know what I'm saying? Like, they are a great team. And as much as, the Thunder needs SGA, the Denver Nuggets need Nikola Jokic more. There is no Denver Nuggets without Nikola Jokic. And, I mean, it's absolute craziness to me that we're considering SGA over this. This is historical. This is probably the best statistical season in NBA history. And we're not going to see an MVP in front of it, which is absolutely crazy. And yeah, you could say, it's just statistics. Don't be a stat merchant. But in terms of impact, Nikola Jokic is way more impactful for his team than SGA is, because the Thunder have a great surrounding unit around SGA, right? You have Lou Dort, you have Cason Wallace, you have what's his name? I can't think of it. Williams. I don't remember his name, but Jaden Williams. There you go. You have Jaden Williams. You have I think that's his name, Chet Holmgren. And even off the bench, you got guys like Isaiah Joe, Alex Caruso. That is truly, even without SGA, is going to be a great team. And the fact that the Nuggets need Jokic, and I think if we're talking MVP, much like I said this with Josh Allen for the NFL, if it's most valuable player, Nikola Jokic is way more valuable than Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. The Denver Nuggets are nothing without Nikola Jokic. And it is kind of ridiculous to me that he's not first in any MVP picks. You look at all the major sites and they're all picking SGA. And I think that the voters, maybe not the voters, but the media is just tired of talking about it. I mean, you see this a lot in sports, and maybe even in real life, is when the media gets bored of talking about something, they stop. So Nikola Jokic, they're not going to talk about him as much because Nikola Jokic has won 3 of the past 4 MVPs. And it should be 4 of the past 5 because he truly deserves this MVP. If he deserved the MVP last year and 2 or 3 years ago and 4 years ago, he deserves this MVP, in my opinion. So, this is by far Jokic's best statistical season. And I believe that if you're going to give him 3 of the last 4 for less statistics, you need to give him this one, just based on that alone. So that is who I think is going to win the NBA awards. Sorry, I'm a Jokic believer. Jokic is, in my opinion, probably one of the best NBA players of all time. And when it's all said and done, we'll probably finish that way. But, if the accolades don't go that way, it's going to be argued. So, anyways, Nikola Jokic for MVP. But yeah, that was today's episode. If you guys have any questions or anything, drop them in chat right now while we got a little bit of time. Gotta love that. Forgot to mute there, but all good. But I hope you guys are excited for next week. If you guys don't know, next week is the draft, and our normal podcast day of Thursday happens to fall on the first round of the draft. So, if you guys like the draft as much as I do, please tune in next Thursday because we'll have our show as normal at 6 p.m. We're going to do our draft, our last mock draft of the season, or of the, off season, I guess. Last mock draft, and I'll do my top 50 big board. So who I think the top 50 players in the draft are. And so off that top 50 big board, I'll take a little break from like 7 to 8. Draft starts at 8. And then we'll do a live stream of the whole entire first round of the NFL draft. So please tune in for that. We're going to have some special guests on. I'm looking for more. So if you want to be on the pod, talk about some NFL stuff, please let me know. Send me a message, and we can get it figured out for sure. But, it's really going to be great stuff, and I'm really excited for the NFL draft. It's going to be so much fun. So hope to see you guys there. That'll be at 8 o'clock. So we're going live on Thursday at 6, and then we're doing our draft special at 8. So hope to see you guys there. It's going to be great stuff. Don't watch the NFL draft. Watch the NFL draft through me. And we'd love that. But anyways, this has been That's an Awful Take. Thank you for tuning in on this early Wednesday episode. I'll see you guys all next Thursday. Follow the social medias at TAATpod on TikTok and Instagram. So without further